Morning, everyone. So I've been going through some notes this morning, and I just wanted to just pick up one item for today, and that's the reasonableness of a lockdown. So in March, we had data come out. The data was horrific. It said millions of lives lost. Government locked us down for 6 weeks so they could prepare the healthcare system so it wouldn't be overwhelmed. Government borrowed 500 billion rands worth of money to prepare the health system so it wouldn't be overwhelmed. And then the lockdown was lifted to, I think it was level 4. But within months, the data was starting to show that this wasn't what they'd expected. And in fact, that initial lockdown database, or that set of information that the World Health Organization used, was actually proved to be incorrect. Government are aware of this, everyone's aware of this, government ignored this, and we just carried on. So every single time we get to a new month, they go, we're extending the lockdown. We're extending the lockdown to save lives. We're extending the lockdown to save lives. See, I don't believe that anymore, and I don't buy this whole narrative, because what is reasonable for a lockdown? And I started asking myself this question at the very beginning. And at the very beginning, 1 million lives lost, I was in a flat panic. I was also terrified, and I could understand it, so I was behind them. After 6 weeks, not so much. After 3-4 months, not at all. So I went to have a look at the CSI's databases, and I put together a very rudimentary graph here with some information. It's on my Twitter feed, and it's basically mortality and cause of death in South Africa, findings from a death notification. And in it, the extract says these causes are recorded as immediate, contributing, and underlying causes of death. Now, we must remember that COVID deaths are COVID related. So you'll die of lung conditions, heart failures, all sorts of related deaths, diabetes, hypertension, all of these things here. When it comes in, they get the secondary infections, people die. If they test positive for COVID, it's put down as a COVID related death. These are purely for influenza and pneumonia. I've stripped out the hypertensive, the diabetes mellitus, all of those, they've been taken out. This is just that. And on the 7th of December, we had 22,206 COVID related deaths. In 2003, we had 72,663 influenza and pneumonia deaths. On the 2006, we had 86,795 influenza and pneumonia deaths. In 2009, over 70,000. In 2012, over 50,000. In 2017, we had 42,385 influenza and pneumonia deaths. 2018, 2019 weren't available. As soon as they are available, I'll add them to this here. COVID for this year, and I want to see if the government actually cap it off at the end of the year, because these numbers are supposed to run from year on year. You cannot have any sort of a mortality rate running over a period of that, because that's going to inflate the numbers beyond all belief. So far for 2020, we've got 22,206 as at the 7th of December. If you want to look at the picture, you can't see it too well, but there's COVID there. So again, the reasonableness behind this. I cannot see why government would want to extend all of it. I think that they're doing this because an agreement has been made, an embargo. Someone struck a deal about vaccines, a lot of money in vaccines. But if we look at the case as it stands, there's no reason to do this. And if you also look at what's happening in the Eastern Cape, if they keep on saying every time someone says why we're extending lockdown, and they're saying it's to save lives, the Eastern Cape have had a surge of something. Now, they say it's COVID. Could be, couldn't be. PCR tests are so inaccurate. I'd say only a fraction probably COVID. A lot of them could be tuberculosis cases and HIV cases, because for this whole year people haven't had their meds, they haven't had proper nutrition, they've been placed under a lot of pressure, they've had no money. So that'll be the lockdown wave that will come over the next couple of years, that massive surge in deaths related to lockdown. And government could just be politely blaming it on that. Who knows, eh? Do you trust your government? I don't. But the mere fact that you can read in the papers, and it says in the papers that people are being turned away and they're on beds, says to me, what happened to the 500 billion rand that was given to flatten the curve and prepare the infrastructure so it doesn't get overwhelmed? Government cannot say now that anything they do from this point forward is to save lives, because if they'd done that, they would have taken all that money and put it into infrastructure to save those lives. You cannot waste that money, have it stolen, and who else knows what happened with it. They haven't done what they said they would. So it's basically saying, no, but we want to save lives, but we didn't bother to save lives. So it doesn't make sense. We cannot extend this lockdown for another period at all. It just is not reasonable. I want everyone just to think about that carefully. Let's just go through those numbers. Let's start looking back. And it's important we look back and say, what did they say? Why they said it? Why we did everything? And then, obviously, as you go along, you cannot use something from the beginning of the year for now. That doesn't work that way. All that does is point to me in the direction that we're waiting for a vaccine. It's a vaccine that they're going to make. When I say they, I don't know who they are right now, but vaccine manufacturers definitely. I don't know if there's anyone else in the pipeline, but lots of money to be made from that. And it also doesn't make sense that we've got a vaccine that normally takes 5 to 10 years of intense medical trials. And we're pushing this through quickly, and already things are popping out. And there are specialists and scientists around the world who are going, no way, we can't do this now. There are too many unknown contributing factors here. We don't know the long-term side effects, but yet our government is putting everything on hold, waiting for a vaccine as the magic bullet, when they fully know that it's not a magic bullet, because a vaccine isn't going to stop the spread. You can't stop the spread of a virus. Herd immunity starts to slow down and blocks it. The vaccine will take care of you, but then they're saying, but you'll get a vaccine, but you'll still wear a mask. And again, little flags pop up, because then what's the point? Also, if you look at the mortality rate there, and you're sitting and going, but it's a fraction of everything else. We never had to have a vaccine for all these other illnesses that have gone around. So when nothing makes sense, we need to sit back and go, wait a minute, guys. They're driving fear onto us. We're ramping up the alert levels. People have gone absolutely crazy. I walk around the shop without a mask on, and people look at me like I'm some sort of murderer. You mention something on an account or in a conversation, and people look at you like you're some sort of a murderer. In the Western Cape, we've got the DA government turning it into a police state, where they want people to report on the other people for not obeying the lockdown regulations and social distancing and things like that. This is absolute madness, folks. All the science points towards we've got a virus that isn't nearly as lethal as we thought it would be. There are vulnerable people. I have them in my family who are vulnerable. There are vulnerable people. Social distancing isn't required. If you're vulnerable, you isolate, you wear a mask, you take precautions. Just like every other year. If you got a lung condition and you got terrible, I can't think of the word now, and that's just so bad because I've spent a whole bunch of time recording on this, and you got terrible emphysema, you'll take precautions. But for the most of us who are perfectly fine, we should be out there exposing ourselves to this, developing immunity, blocking the transmission, just the way nature intended, the way it's been done for years and years and years. Never before have we gone to these mad lengths over something like this. So let's start asking questions. Thank you.